Blake, what kind of agreements are customary in these? So you're a landman, you're working on a battery storage project. It's a utility scale type project, so you're looking for 20 to 30 acre parcels. How's that process? What types of agreements are they? Term, lease agreements, or do you see people trying to just outright buy land? Like, how's that process?
I'm glad you asked that, Brent, because that's actually one of our bigger challenges in acquiring this land for these projects. Is everything's kind of structured on an option agreement, so the developers actually just kind of pay the landowner for a 5-year period to evaluate how big of a project they need, if the grid can support it. So it's very rarely a straight up lease or sale or any type of situation. We're looking at a 5-year window, and judging on how backed up these queues are with a grid operator like ERCOT or MISO, dirt's not getting moved until year 4 or 5. So that's kind of a challenge that we face, trying to communicate to the landowners, like, yes, we want to sign up your land, we want to build this project, but it's going to be a while until dirt actually gets moved.
And that's a lot of the things I like
So
to,
you're starting with
explain to
a
these landowners too, what they ask, and especially in these areas that are oil and gas dominant. Why do y'all need a 5-year option? Well, we start to explain the variables that the developer has to run through, whether it's the permitting process. And I think Natalie could probably touch on that pretty well. I mean, what entails in this 5-year option? Why do they need that long?
Yeah,
so
well, I can give you a very quick rundown. There's environmental studies that have to be done to make sure that the developers are properly respecting the environment. There's permitting, local governance that they need to navigate through, making sure that they have approval. They may have to rezone the land from agricultural to commercial use. So we've got to get through the title commitment policy and the mineral title and shared use agreements with oil and gas operators and surface waivers for mineral owners. So there's a lot that has to happen before they can actually construct easements. They've got to get easements. They've got to get the main study from the electrical service provider done, and that all has to pass forward.
yeah, I think as landmen, we know we can get things done quickly, right? So oftentimes the land work's done quickly. You can get your environmental work done quickly. You can get a lot of those things done. What tends to be the longest, the thing that really draws these projects out? Is it that interconnect authority or permitting on the interconnection side? Is that it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yes,
it's
every market's different.
yeah.
Yeah, ERCOT is one of the faster markets, which is why you see a lot of folks move in that
Focusing
direction.
here. Yeah.
The PJM area, Pennsylvania, Ohio, that area up there, it takes a long time. I think they're battling 7 years right now, which is why we're not seeing as much up there as we're seeing in ERCOT, MISO, SPP. And then the Southeast area, which would be Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, that's a whole different ball game. And then you get into WEC, which is your California, Rockies area. And those are all going to be very state dependent. As we know, California has a lot of legislation involved, a lot more than other areas.
That was
So
polite.
everywhere you go, it's different.
Very, very polite. You running for office over there or something?
I
God.
did live in California for a year. I graduated from high school there. So my sister's still there. So I got to show some California love, even though I might not agree with them.
Cool. So, okay, guys. So we've talked through, generally what these projects are. We've discussed the size of the projects. We've talked about generally how the agreements are formed or structured. What's some of the down and dirty? Like, let's talk about, when back to what a landman does. We've negotiated this option, right? Of whatever it is. Maybe it's an option. Is it an option to purchase? Is it an option to lease? If we do roll into a lease, what are those agreement structures like? How are the commercial terms? What are the commercial terms of a battery storage agreement with a landowner?
Lake and Pat, tell us about it, guys.
Go ahead, Blake.
It's really different from client to client. Typically, you see a really long, on the lease side, a 20 or 30-year initial term with several extensions on the back end of that. Because I think the goal for these types of projects is to get 2 life cycles out of the batteries. And my
Okay.
understanding, the life cycle is about 20 years apiece. So you're looking really for a 40-year, all in term. And for purchase option, I mean, when they start moving dirt and pick up that option, they own the land, so that gets picked up immediately, and it's theirs to own and keep.
Just an outright purchase. So
Mhm.
long-term agreements like we see for, the solar type agreements, is it just a rental-based agreement? They're paying you an annual rental for the use of
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
land? Is that
Negotiated with
the
it
basic
typically,
structure?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that escalators typically are negotiated. It's part of the negotiation process.
1.5, 2%.
Yes, and that's becoming more and more important. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of helped combat inflation over the life of these agreements. And that's always the first thing that these people ask when they see these lease agreements is like, well, what if my land is worth, 2x, 3x more down the line? How are you guys going to compensate me for that? And that's when we deploy the escalator, kind of help smooth that over.
Yeah. Yeah. What's a dollar going to be worth 40 years from now?
Yeah.
Who knows?
And
So
you and I don't know, but we know it's going to be a lot
And I
less.
think one of the interesting challenges.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting challenges we run into a lot. I mean, it's all community relations too. And I keep speaking on Texas and the ERCOT market and oil and gas dominant. These people have dealt with it. Some of these folks for 40 plus years. And so they can't, there is a negative connotation. A lot of this is politically driven. So in the communities, I think to answer your question, whenever it comes to an option to purchase, some of these folks just want to be completely disengaged from the operation itself because they don't want their neighbor hating them, for lack of a better term. They don't want that tied into the community of, 1,000 people or less, and now they're the guy that sold out or the lady that sold out. So I think you see that a lot, and we tend to drive in that direction whenever that becomes the case. Sometimes it makes it easier to work with these folks. They want to work with you, but they don't want to be tied to that negative connotation per se.
Yeah. Well, I like anybody, an outright purchase, there's a value to a dollar in my hand today
Right.
than some form of a dollar, some fraction of a dollar tomorrow. So I know that we have seen quite a bit of that in the battery space. It's maybe you get a lease agreement, but more so often it's just an outright purchase if you're able to get your project constructed. And so we'll do purchase options where if we'd decide to exercise that option, does a realtor come into place, as a closing company, a title company, kind of facilitate that purchase or that process?
It's going to depend on what market we're in and the real estate laws in that market on how the client is going to handle that, handle the transaction. Some states do require a realtor's license to be involved in it. Some do not. Many times it's going to be between the client. We don't really play a party to any sort of closing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be between the client and whatever title company they're using to get those final documents in place and actually close it out.
Yeah. I know on the Dudley Select Title side, I mean, we're starting to see and get a lot of opportunity in the battery storage space because of our closing. We're title company, so we can close the transactions. We can support that. In other states, you're going to want to work with a land company, but you better have your title company ready to go to be able to close on these and transact on these deals. So that makes a lot of sense.